The pharmacy door burst open with such force that the display of reading glasses rattled on their stand. A little boy, maybe 8 years old, ran inside, his sneakers squeaking on the linoleum floor. His chest heaved with panicked breaths and tears carved tracks down his dusty cheeks. "Please, somebody help! They hurt my grandma!" he cried, his small finger pointing toward the strip mall parking lot. Outside, an elderly woman sat slumped against a concrete planter, her purse torn open beside her, its contents scattered across the asphalt, while a silver sedan peeled away, rap music thumping from its windows. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments, and please subscribe to our channel. It helps us bring you more inspiring stories every day. The spring afternoon hung heavy with humidity in Bellwood, a working-class neighborhood on the south side of Atlanta, when Rosa Martinez, a 68-year-old retired seamstress, decided to pick up her grandson from school. Little Tommy, 8 years old and full of questions about everything, climbed into her modest Honda Civic with his backpack dragging behind him. "Abuela, can we stop for ice cream?" Tommy asked, buckling his seatbelt with practiced efficiency. Rosa adjusted her glasses and smiled at him through the rearview mirror. "After we pick up my medicine, mijo. Doctor's orders." "What medicine?" "For my heart," she said gently. "It doesn't work as good as it used to, but the medicine helps." Tommy frowned with the seriousness only children can muster. "I'll protect your heart, abuela. I promise." She reached back and squeezed his hand. "I know you will, mi amor." The strip mall pharmacy sat between a dollar store and a tax preparation office that had been closed since April. Rosa pulled into a space near the entrance, moving slowly as her arthritis demanded. Tommy helped her out of the car, carefully holding her arm the way she'd taught him. They were halfway to the pharmacy entrance when trouble found them. 3 young women in their early 20s emerged from the dollar store, laughing too loud, moving with the aggressive confidence of people who'd never faced real consequences. The leader, a woman named Shanice with elaborate nail extensions and designer sunglasses, spotted Rosa's purse, a worn leather bag that had been a gift from her late husband. "Yo, hold up," Shanice called out, stepping into Rosa's path. Rosa tried to move around her. "Excuse me, please." "That's a nice purse," Shanice said, her friends flanking her on either side. "Vintage, right? My grandma had one just like it." "Thank you," Rosa said politely, trying again to pass. Shanice grabbed the purse strap. "I said it's nice. How much you want for it?" "It's not for sale." Rosa's voice remained calm, but Tommy could feel her hand trembling in his. "Everything's for sale, abuela," Shanice sneered, using the word like a weapon. She yanked hard on the purse. Rosa held on, her arthritic fingers locked around the strap. "Please, my medication." "Let go!" Shanice shoved Rosa backward. The elderly woman's feet tangled, her bad hip giving out. She fell hard against the concrete planter, her head snapping back against the edge. "Abuela!" Tommy screamed, dropping to his knees beside her. The 3 women grabbed the purse, dumping its contents onto the ground. They snatched Rosa's wallet, ignored the pill bottles, and ran laughing toward their car. "Stay broke, old lady!" one of them shouted. Rosa's glasses were cracked, blood trickling from a cut on her temple. Her hand shook as she reached for Tommy. "I'm okay, baby, I'm okay." But she wasn't. Her breathing came shallow and rapid. Her lips were losing color. A man rushed out of the pharmacy, phone already in hand. "I'm calling 911. Tommy ran inside, his small voice breaking with terror. "Please, somebody help. They hurt my grandma." Across town, at Warriors Way Martial Arts Academy, a woman named Jin Lightning Lee was teaching an advanced kickboxing class when her phone vibrated. She held up one finger to her students, 12 fighters ranging from teens to middle-aged parents, and checked the message from her sister who worked at that strip mall pharmacy. "Elderly woman just got robbed and assaulted in our parking lot. 3 girls beat her down and took her purse in front of her grandson. Police came but said probably won't catch them. Security footage malfunctioned." Jin's jaw clenched. She'd spent 15 years in professional martial arts, kickboxing, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She'd fought in rings from Bangkok to Las Vegas, but more importantly, she'd grown up in Bellwood, raised by her grandmother after her parents died in a car accident. She knew what grandmothers meant. "Class dismissed early," she said quietly, "but everyone stay. We need to talk." Within minutes, her students knew everything. Rosa Martinez, a retired seamstress who volunteered at the community center. robbed and hurt by Shanice Butler and her crew, local troublemakers who'd been terrorizing elderly residents for months with no consequences because their victims were too afraid to press charges. Jin made a call, then another, then 15 more. By the time the sun started its descent toward the Atlanta skyline, word had spread through the underground fighting community like wildfire. Fighters from 3 gyms, 2 boxing clubs, and 1 capoeira studio began to mobilize. At Grady Memorial Hospital, Rosa lay in a bed with monitors beeping softly around her. Tommy hadn't left her side, his small hand gripping her sleeve. A nurse adjusted her IV while a doctor reviewed her chart. "Mrs. Martinez, you have a mild concussion and your blood pressure is elevated," the doctor said gently. "We need to keep you overnight for observation." "My grandson," Rosa whispered. "He needs—" "I called your daughter," the nurse interjected kindly. "She's on her way from work." Tommy looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "Abuela, why did they hurt you? You were being nice." Rosa touched his cheek with trembling fingers. "Some people, mijo, they forget how to see others as human beings. They only see what they can take." "I hate them," Tommy said, his voice small but fierce. "Don't," Rosa said softly. "Hate is heavy, too heavy for a little boy to carry." But Tommy's small fists were clenched tight against the hospital sheets. Outside in the parking lot, the sound began. Not engines like motorcycles, but feet. Dozens of pairs of feet moving in synchronized rhythm. Fighters jogging in formation, their approach announced by the slap of athletic shoes on concrete. Nurses moved to windows. Security guards stepped outside. Visitors in the lobby turned to stare. 43 fighters arrived like an army. Men and women of every ethnicity, wearing gym shirts and athletic gear, their bodies marked with the evidence of their dedication. Taped hands, compression sleeves, cauliflower ears. They ranged from professional fighters to amateur boxers to weekend warriors who trained because discipline gave their lives meaning. Jin led them, her face set with quiet determination. She walked through the emergency room doors, her presence commanding immediate attention. "I'm here to see Rosa Martinez," she told the receptionist. The woman blinked, intimidated, but also intrigued by the crowd behind Jin. "Are you family?" "We're her family now," Jin said. "Tell her the fighters are here." Rosa heard them before she saw them, the distinctive sound of 43 people moving with the disciplined grace of trained athletes. When Jin appeared in her doorway, Rosa's eyes widened in confusion. "Who are you?" Jin approached the bed respectfully. "My name is Jin Lee. I'm a fighter, kickboxing, Muay Thai. I heard what happened to you today." Rosa shook her head weakly. "You don't need to be here. I'll be fine." "With respect, ma'am, that's not the point." Jin knelt beside Tommy. "Hey there, brave one. You okay?" Tommy nodded, studying this woman who moved like water and looked like she could punch through walls. "You protected your grandmother today," Jin said gently. "You stayed with her, called for help. That took real courage." Tommy's lip quivered. "But they still hurt her." "They did," Jin acknowledged, "and nobody in that parking lot stopped them. But that's about to change. See, fighters look out for each other. And your grandmother? She's one of us now. Anyone who gets hurt protecting their family deserves protection in return." Rosa tried to sit up. "You can't get involved. Those girls, they run with dangerous people. You'll only make trouble for yourselves." Jin's eyes hardened. "Trouble's already been made, Mrs. Martinez. We're just correcting the balance." She turned to the nurse. "When can she be discharged?" "Tomorrow morning if her vitals stay stable." "Good." Jin looked back at Rosa. "We'll be outside all night. Nobody's going to bother you or your grandson. You have my word." True to her promise, shifts of 6 fighters maintained a presence outside Rosa's room throughout the night. They were quiet, respectful, but their presence was unmistakable. Tommy fell asleep knowing his abuela was safe, warriors standing guard like something from the stories she used to tell him. The next morning, Shanice Butler woke up in her mother's apartment on the east side, scrolling through Instagram. Her friends had posted pictures of them flashing cash at a club, wearing new outfits bought with Rosa's credit cards before she could cancel them. Her mother, Angela, sat at the kitchen table paying bills with a calculator and a stack of past-due notices. "What are you smiling about?" Angela asked, exhausted from her overnight shift at the hospital. Ironically, the same hospital where Rosa was recovering. "Nothing," Shanice said, hiding her phone. But Angela had already heard. Small neighborhoods talk fast. She'd heard from a coworker about the elderly woman, the robbery, the grandson. She'd heard the victim's name, Rosa Martinez, the woman who'd altered Angela's wedding dress 15 years ago for free because Angela couldn't afford a seamstress. Angela's face went pale, then red. "You put your hands on Rosa Martinez?" Shanice shrugged. She shouldn't have been holding on so tight. "You're an idiot," Angela said, her voice shaking. "That woman is a saint in this community." "Whatever, she'll be fine." Angela grabbed Shanice's phone, saw the photos, the bragging posts. "Do you understand what you've done? Do you have any idea who's going to come looking for you? Nobody cares about some old lady." The sound cut her off. Rhythmic, purposeful. 43 pairs of feet running in formation down their street. Angela moved to the window and felt her blood run cold. "Oh, God." "What?" Shanice joined her, then stepped back. "What the hell?" The fighters filled the street like a disciplined battalion. They weren't threatening, weren't aggressive. They simply stood there in formation, 3 rows deep, while Jin walked to the front door and knocked. Angela opened it, her face apologetic. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know. Is Shanice Butler here?" Jin asked politely but firmly. Shanice pushed past her mother. "Who wants to know?" Jin studied her. "My name is Jin Lee. I represent the martial arts community of Bellwood and beyond. We're here about Rosa Martinez." "So what, you gonna jump me?" Shanice tried to sound tough, but her voice wavered. "No," Jin said calmly. "We don't fight civilians. We're here to deliver a message. You have until noon tomorrow to turn yourself into the police, return what you stole, and apologize to Mrs. Martinez and her family." Shanice laughed nervously. "Or what?" Jin pulled out her phone, showing security footage from a neighboring business that had captured everything. Shanice shoving Rosa, grabbing her purse, laughing as the elderly woman lay bleeding. "Or this goes everywhere," Jin said. "Social media, news stations, community boards. Your face, your name, everything. And trust me, when a neighborhood sees someone attack their grandmother, their seamstress, their neighbor, they don't forget. They don't forgive." Shanice's bravado cracked. "You're trying to scare me." "I'm giving you a choice," Jin corrected. "Face what you did like an adult, or spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. Because we're not going anywhere. We'll be at your work, at the stores you shop, at the clubs you go to. Not threatening you, just watching. Just making sure everyone knows what you did." Angela grabbed her daughter's arm. "Shanice, please, just listen to them." "Why should I?" Shanice's voice rose. "My cousins will—" "Your cousins will what?" Jin's voice remained calm. "Fight 43 trained martial artists? We don't want violence, we want justice. We want you to understand that actions have consequences, that respect isn't optional, and that some communities still stand up when others look away." The fighters behind Jin stood perfectly still, their presence speaking louder than any threat. Jin continued. "You see these people? That's Marcus. He trains fighters for the Olympics. That's Tasha. She teaches self-defense to abused survivors for free. That's Diego. He competed in the UFC. Every single person here dedicates their life to discipline, honor, and protecting those who can't protect themselves. And you know what? They all have grandmothers too." Shanice looked at the sea of faces, seeing not anger, but disappointment. Something about that was worse. "Noon tomorrow," Jin repeated. "Do the right thing, or we do it for you." The fighters dispersed as silently as they had arrived, their footsteps fading into the morning. Shanice stood in the doorway, her phone feeling heavy in her hand. Angela closed the door and turned to her daughter. "You're going to that police station." "Mom, no." Angela's voice was steel. "I raised you better than this. I worked 3 jobs to give you opportunities I never had, and you used them to hurt people? To hurt Rosa Martinez, the woman who showed me kindness when I had nothing?" Shanice's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean to hurt her that bad." "But you did," Angela said, "and now you're going to fix it." Rosa was discharged at 10 a.m. Tommy held her hand carefully as they walked slowly toward the hospital exit. Waiting in the lobby was Jin and 20 of her fighters. Rosa stopped. "You came back," Jin smiled. "We're escorting you home, Mrs. Martinez, and we're making sure this never happens to you or anyone else again." "You don't have to do this," Rosa said, though her eyes were grateful. "Yes, we do," Jin said simply. "Because if we don't stand up for our elders, what kind of community are we?" Tommy tugged Jin's sleeve. "Are you a superhero?" Jin knelt to his level. No, little man, I'm just someone who believes we're all responsible for each other. Your grandmother spent her life helping people, sewing clothes, volunteering, being kind. Now it's our turn to help her. The convoy walked through Bellwood, a sight that brought people to their windows and storefronts. At intersections, neighbors waved. At the community center, volunteers came outside and applauded. Someone had already hung a banner. "We stand with Rosa." They escorted Rosa to her small house where her daughter Maria waited on the porch, having rushed home from her job at the call center. She embraced her mother, tears streaming. "Mama, I was so worried." Jin approached respectfully. "Ma'am, your mother is very brave. What happened won't happen again. You have our word." Maria looked at the gathering of fighters, seeing their determination. "Thank you. Thank you for caring when the system didn't." "We take care of our own," Jin said. "That's what community means." That afternoon, while Rosa rested and Maria fussed over her, the fighters went to work. They visited the pharmacy and collected the security footage. They visited the neighboring businesses and found 3 more cameras that had captured the assault. They talked to witnesses who'd been too afraid to come forward. By evening, they had everything they needed. Jin called a friend, a civil rights attorney named James Washington, who'd made his career holding people accountable for crimes against vulnerable populations. He watched the footage and shook his head. "I'll file charges first thing tomorrow. Assault, robbery, elder abuse, and I'll make sure the media knows. These girls can't hide from this." But Jin wanted more than legal justice. She wanted the community to understand that preying on the vulnerable would no longer be tolerated. The next morning at 11:30, Shanice Butler walked into the Bellwood police station. She was alone. No mother, no lawyer, no friends. Just herself and a backpack containing Rosa's wallet, the stolen cash, and a handwritten apology letter she'd spent all night writing. "I'm here to confess to robbery and assault," she told the desk sergeant. The sergeant looked up, surprised. "You're confessing?" "Rosa Martinez," Shanice said, her voice breaking. "I want to confess and press charges against myself." By noon, the neighborhood knew. By evening, it had reached the local news. By the next morning, it was a regional story. Young woman confesses after martial arts community intervenes. The narrative wasn't about vigilantism. It was about a community refusing to accept violence against its elders, about fighters using their platform for justice when institutions failed. Rosa sat in her living room watching the news with Tommy on her lap. He'd insisted on staying home from school to be with his abuela. "She said sorry," Tommy said, pointing at the TV showing Shanice's tearful confession. "She did," Rosa agreed softly. "Do you forgive her, abuela?" Rosa was quiet for a long moment, her fingers gently combing through Tommy's hair. "Forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was okay, mijo. But if she's truly sorry, if she's willing to change, then yes, I can forgive her." A knock at the door. Maria answered, then called out, "Mama, you have visitors." Jin stood on the porch with 5 of her fighters, all holding grocery bags. "We brought food," Jin said. "Figured you might need some meals while you recover." Rosa stood slowly, Tommy helping her. "You've done so much already." "This is what family does," Jin said, then smiled. "Plus, we heard you make the best empanadas in Bellwood. We're hoping for lessons once you're feeling better." Tommy tugged Jin's shirt. "Can I show you something?" He ran to his room and returned with a drawing, stick figures and fighting poses with a cape-wearing grandmother in the center. Across the top in crayon, "Thank you for saving abuela." Jin knelt down, her eyes unexpectedly bright. "This is incredible, Tommy. Can I keep it?" He nodded enthusiastically. "You can hang it in your gym." Rosa extended her hand to Jin. "I don't know how to thank you. You gave me something I thought was lost. You gave me faith in people again." Jin took her hand gently. "You never lost it, Mrs. Martinez. You just needed to be reminded that good people still outnumber the bad ones." As the fighters prepared to leave, Tommy called out, "Will you teach me to fight?" Jin smiled. "When you're older, if your abuela and mom say yes, we'll teach you. But remember, fighting isn't about hurting people. It's about discipline, respect, and protecting those who can't protect themselves. Like you protected abuela?" "Exactly like that." The legal process moved forward. Shanice Butler was charged with robbery and assault on an elderly person. She pleaded guilty, was sentenced to probation, community service, and was required to participate in a restorative justice program where Rosa agreed to meet with her. Their first meeting was tense. Shanice couldn't stop crying. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I don't know why I did it. I was angry at everything, and you were just there, and I took it out on you." Rosa studied the young woman across from her. "Do you know what I do, mija?" Shanice shook her head. "I was a seamstress for 40 years. I fixed things that were broken. I took fabric that was torn and made it whole again. And you know what I learned? Everything can be mended if you're patient and careful." "How can you not hate me?" "Because hate doesn't fix anything," Rosa said gently. "You made a terrible mistake. A mistake that hurt me, scared my grandson, and could have been much worse. But you confessed. You're here. You're trying. That means something." Over the following months, Shanice worked at the community center alongside Rosa, helping elderly residents with shopping, errands, and companionship. She heard stories from people who'd lived through Jim Crow, who'd marched for civil rights, who'd worked their whole lives for their families. She learned about dignity, resilience, and the true meaning of strength. And slowly, Shanice began to change. 6 months after the incident, Warriors Way Martial Arts Academy held an open house fundraiser for elder services. Rosa and Tommy were guests of honor, and Tommy wore a mini GI that Jin had given him. The event drew over 300 people from across Atlanta. Demonstrations, raffles, food, all proceeds going to programs that protected vulnerable seniors. Jin spoke to the crowd from the center of the mat. "We gathered here 6 months ago because someone in our community was hurt. Today, we gather to celebrate what happened next, how a neighborhood came together, how justice was served, and how healing began." The crowd applauded. Tommy stood on a chair beside his grandmother, waving to everyone. "We fight to protect," Jin continued. "We train to serve. And we stand together because that's what communities do." Shanice stood at the back of the crowd, uncertain whether she belonged. Rosa saw her and gestured for her to come forward. "You're part of this too," Rosa said. "Redemption means being welcomed back." Shanice's eyes filled. "I don't deserve your kindness." "Maybe not," Rosa said honestly, "but I'm giving it anyway. That's what grace is." As the sun set over Atlanta, casting orange light through the gym windows, Jin walked over to Rosa one final time. "You changed a lot of lives, Mrs. Martinez. You know that?" Rosa shook her head. "You did that. You and your fighters." "No," Jin said gently. "You showed us why we train, why we discipline ourselves, why we build strength, not to hurt but to protect, not to dominate but to serve. You reminded us that being a warrior means standing for those who can't stand for themselves." Tommy hugged Jin's leg. "Will you come to my birthday party?" Jin laughed, ruffling his hair. "Wouldn't miss it, warrior in training." That evening, as the Martinez family drove home through familiar streets, Tommy asked, "Abuela, when I grow up, can I be a fighter like Miss Jin?" Rosa glanced at her grandson in the rearview mirror. "You already are, mijo. Being a fighter isn't about punches and kicks. It's about standing up for what's right, about loyalty, about protecting people who need help. It's about having a strong heart." "I can do that," Tommy said with the certainty only children possess. "I know you can," Rosa said. "You already proved it." Maria reached over and squeezed her mother's hand. "We're blessed, Mama." "We are," Rosa agreed. "But more than that, we're surrounded by good people. And in this world, that's everything." As they pulled into their driveway, the faint sound of Kiai's shouts echoed from the gym down the street. Fighters training, practicing, preparing, not for violence, but for the moment when someone would need them, when they'd be called to stand, to protect, to serve. And they would. Answer: they always did. Epilogue. 3 years later. Tommy, now 11 years old, stood in his white GI at Warriors Way Martial Arts Academy. He'd been training for 2 years, earning his yellow belt, then orange, and now he was testing for green. Jin watched from the sidelines as Tommy moved through his kata, his movements precise, his focus absolute. In the audience, Rosa sat with Maria, both beaming with pride. After the test, Tommy bowed to his instructors and ran to his grandmother. Did you see, Abuela? Did you see? I saw, mi amor. You were wonderful. Jin approached, holding Tommy's new green belt. You've earned this, Tommy. But remember, the belt doesn't make the warrior, Tommy recited. The warrior's heart makes the warrior. Exactly, Jin said, tying the belt around his waist. On the gym wall hung a photograph, Rosa surrounded by 43 fighters, all of them smiling. Below it was Tommy's crayon drawing, faded but cherished, and beside that a plaque that read, "Strength protects the vulnerable. Discipline serves the community. Warriors stand for justice." Outside, the Atlanta sun painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere in the neighborhood, someone needed help. Somewhere, a fighter was preparing to answer that call. Because some lessons endure, some bonds never break, and some communities never forget what it means to stand together. We take care of our own. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Share your thoughts in the comments. Would you stand up for a stranger like these fighters did? Until next time, train hard, stand strong, and protect those who need it most.